In part 2 of my Tower of God history series, I talked about Zahards journey to declaring himself as the king of the tower. Once he reached the 134th floor, he announced that he would stop climbing the tower. He split the key to the next floor in two, giving one half to the blacksmith Ashul Edwaru, who melted the key into 13 weapons, meant for Zahard and his 12 companions, making it impossible for anyone to reach the 135th floor, which didn't sit well with some of his companions. They gathered allies and tried to get the key from Zahard, and a war which would later be referred to as the Age of Genesis began. So join me as we look through the horrifying events known as the Age of Genesis in part 3 of my Tower of God history series. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get started with the Age of Genesis. Now, as I mentioned, Ashul Edwaru melted half the key into 13 weapons. These weapons were originally meant for Zahard and his 12 companions. However, what I didn't mention was that soon after Zahard proclaimed himself as the king of the tower, he proposed to Arlene. Arlene, however, was already engaged to V at this point and turned him down. Enraged by Arlene's answer, Zahard decided to keep the 13 weapons to himself and didn't share them with the great warriors. Although at first confused about Zahard's decision to stop climbing the tower, none of the great warriors tried to stop Zahard apart from two people, Arlene and V. Arlene and V then formed an organization with the goal of liberating the key from Zahard. Zahard, however, had no intention to give the key away and assembled an army to fight on his behalf. This army included fanatics of Zahard as well as some of the children of the great warriors. On the other hand, Arlene and V's organization included descendants of the native ones. This war went on for quite some time, and this is where it gets a bit complicated, and I'm not 100% sure on the order of events, so keep that in mind for the rest of the video. In fact, keep that in mind for the entire series. It's not always very clear which event happened when, since time works very differently in the Tower of God universe. I will still try my best to talk about the events in a chronological order, as that is the whole point of this series. Anyway, after Zahard declared himself as the king of the tower, he met with his data self, which existed in the hidden floor inside the Hell Train. The data version of Zahard was more flustered than happy when he met the real Zahard, because in spite of how flawless and perfect his future self seemed as a powerful and great king, he sensed a small but massive feeling of anxiety within his real self. Data Zahard was so disappointed after he found out that his real self is feared of something despite having gotten so powerful. Data Zahard decided to help his real self to change the hidden floor and hide a special bracelet. Data Zahard brought a mirror, which led to a new mirror world. Data Zahard proposed to his 12 companions that they need to move and live in the new mirror world for privacy, because the current mirror world they are in is getting crowded with the data of regulars who have cleared the Hell Train. Data Zahard received this mirror from his real self, the King Zahard. All of Zahard's companions agreed to move into the new mirror world, except the data version of Kun Edwan. Data Edwan refused to move into the new mirror world because he was suspicious of Data Zahard. Data Edwan felt that Data Zahard had changed into someone different after he met the real him. Later, the suspicion of Data Edwan was confirmed after he investigated and traveled to the new mirror world himself. He found out that all of the data that crossed over into the new mirror world were deleted. As the war in the real world continued, the great warriors sided with Zahard. Arlene and V had to come to the realization that they could not defeat Zahard and his army, which forced them into hiding. However, soon after they ran away, Arlene got pregnant with V's child. Having heard the rumors that the love of his life was expecting a baby with another man, Zahard became furious. Now Zahard, who had earlier been willing to allow her to stay alive in exile, tracked Arlene down and brutally murdered the child right in front of her. This traumatic incident caused Arlene to go insane, as she tried multiple times to commit suicide. However, she was unable to kill herself because of the immortality contract she made with the administrator of the 100th floor during her initial climb with Zahard and the other great warriors. Depressed over seeing his wife in such a state, V, who didn't have an immortality contract, eventually took his own life in order to save Arlene from her continued suffering. He hoped that she could return to their former companions if he was no more. Before dying, he wrote a note telling Arlene to forget everything and to return to her companions, in hopes she could find some semblance of normality. But it was too late. Arlene's hatred towards Zahard was already too great, and the death of V only further made her more bitter. She wandered the tower for a very long time, in hopes of finding a way out of the tower. She used a magic spell to keep the body of her dead child from rotting, and kept keepsakes from V around with her. She believed that she could find a way to resurrect her dead child if she could make it outside. Arlene finally found a way outside, but left behind a personal pocket with her diary. At the end of her diary, she wrote this: "I finally found a way to get out of this place. A place without Zahard or the administrators. I don't know where this place will be, but as long as I can see that vast sky and shining stars, which are so much like my own home, it doesn't matter." But even as I was leaving this place, I could not let go of the longing for my love and the pity for my dead child. So, I decided to offer this child's body to the god on the outside. Someday, that god's power will enter the dead child's body and awaken him again. That child will open the door to this tower and return someday. He shall achieve vengeance for my love and finish the war which we started with his own hands. He shall destroy corrupt power and bring truth to the tower. God's messenger shall place the red thorn in that child's hands, and that child shall use that red thorn to cut the throat of the greedy king. And he shall find the hidden key, open the door, and lead everyone on the tower to greater heights. And this is where the story of Arlene and Vi, the great warriors, ends. However, the age of Genesis has only just begun. Zahard and the 10 family heads did everything they could to erase the traces of Arlene and Vi's existence. All structures and records of them were destroyed, and even the memories of artificial life forms were changed. Zahard's army hunted down and killed most of the native ones' direct descendants. Those that managed to escape and survive were cursed with a terrible spell. These remaining native ones' descendants were later known as the Cursed People. These cursed people and their descendants were affected by different curses. 1. They were born with a male and female side in a single body and lost their reproductive ability. 2. They had their original power sealed off. Or 3. The chances of them giving a stillbirth increased to the extreme, even if they got pregnant, so their number were on the decrease. The events that transpired led to Grace Mashea Laslek, who was a warlord serving under Vi, forming FUG, an organization with the sole purpose of killing Zahard and the 10 family heads. I might do a video talking about FUG separate from the history series. For now you should know that FUG was the main opposition to Zahard's army during the Age of Genesis, and that they killed many soldiers in Zahard's army, including children of the great family heads. However, FUG were not the only ones still fighting with Zahard's army. Several nations and countries also opposed Zahard becoming king of the tower. These nations formed an alliance, known as the 5 Flower Nations. One of these nations is called the Land of the Peach Blossom. The king of this land ordered a man to fight on the battlefield against Zahard's forces, which caused him to be killed in battle. This man had 2 daughters called Dowon and Cain. After their father passed away, Dowon and Cain trained hard to become rankers. Dowon had a lot of talent, so she was chosen by her nation to train with the masters of FUG. The other nations also sent representatives to train under FUG. These chosen warriors were then assigned to a special team, the Hidden Grove. This team consisted of outstanding rankers, including Taro York, Toro, Kunheit Lak, and other unnamed members. Their leaders were Dowon and Cha. Now, you might have noticed that one of the members' names is Kun. Kunheit Lak joined FUG simply as a rebellious act for fun and adventures, playing bad guys for thrill and adrenaline. He knew that no matter how much they tried, they could never change the tower, so he was prepared to exit or withdraw if things got too dangerous. But nevertheless, he enjoyed the journeys and grew to love his friends in the Hidden Grove. Anyway, the Hidden Grove was among the most accomplished teams formed during the Age of Genesis. They killed multiple high rankers in Zahard's army, as well as direct descendants of the great family heads. But after a while, Zahard and the 10 family heads got tired of the war and left the opposing countries a choice to either coexist under the Zahard Empire or to face extermination. One of the nations that were in this dilemma was the Land of the Peach Blossom, Dowon's home. This kingdom was surrounded by Zahard's army, with no hope of freeing themselves. The kingdom chose coexistence. However, Zahard wanted a price for the coexistence. The price for coexistence was for the rebel groups and nations to give spoils of war. One of them was the flower wave controller Dowon. Dowon was to be sealed away. Having no other choice, Dowon decided to go back to her kingdom. In a teary goodbye with Cha, she reciprocated his feelings for her, saying that he could ask her out after she got unsealed. When Dowon returned to her hometown, the townspeople avoided making eye contact or talking to her. Dowon thought that they probably felt guilty. She then decided to not resent her own people and vowed to erase their memories away with a spell so that they wouldn't torment themselves over the guilty feeling for the rest of their lives. At some point after that, she visited the king of her nation, who immediately asked for her forgiveness for making such a harsh decision to seal her. Several days after her return, Zahard's forces did keep their promise to retreat, and the townspeople started looking happier. Slowly but surely, life returned to the land of the peach blossom. Dowan, who found it hard to bear the scenery, quarantined herself with cane and hardly ever left the house. Then one day, when she traveled the town for a bit, a little kid came to talk to her and grabbed one of Dowan's fingers. Dowan was initially happy and felt warmth, but it quickly became sadness when the kid said she grabbed Dowan so that she wouldn't run away and escape. Upon returning home, Dowan met a mysterious man whose appearance resembles that of Zahard. The man then introduced himself as a nameless adventurer and told Dowan that she can call him boss. The two of them talked for a while. When the man said he knew that Dowan was going to be sealed, he told her that it won't last forever and she would awaken in the future someday. Dowan was curious and asked the man whether the world would be peaceful when she woke up. The man replied that he was certain that the world would still be at war. The man then started telling Dowan the story about the boy who would spark a war in the future, and added that Dowan would encounter the boy when she awakened. A few days after Dowan's encounter with the nameless adventurer, she was sealed away in a place known as the Wall of Peaceful Coexistence. After Dowan was sealed, Char was deeply saddened and furious. He left the Hidden Grove and went on a rampage, killing several allies of Zahard's army until he met the nameless adventurer. The man told Char that he could see Dowan again if he too would be sealed away. He also told him that he could meet a special boy who would make his wish come true once he has been unsealed. So Char decided to let himself be sealed as well. With their two leaders sealed, the remaining members of the Hidden Grove joined Kel Halam and his team. Kel Halam, a member of FUG, gained the ability to see fate. He created a plan to ambush King Zahard directly while he was asleep. For that purpose, he gathered powerful fighters from FUG to create a special attack team. Kel Halam was very confident with his ability to see fate and believed he could quickly turn the tides of the war. However, Coonhide Luck believed that FUG could not defeat Zahard and thought that such a plan would only end up as a suicide mission. But he couldn't stop his friends, who were consumed and blinded by rage, from executing the plan. In his desperate attempts to save all his friends in the Hidden Grove team from their inevitable death, Coonhide Luck contacted his Coon's family relative Popidau Liboric Coon after he found out that Liboric is an elite member in Zahard's army, and told him everything about FUG's plan to assassinate Zahard in exchange for his friends' lives. Liboric, of course, accepted the information and promised Luck that he would save them. When the day of FUG's assault towards King Zahard, led by Kel Halam, had finally arrived, Luck followed Liboric's instructions to guide his friends to a promised safe location, where they will be captured for a while and later be released. Liboric did keep his promise to keep the Hidden Grove members safe, but he never intended to release them, and instead he took all of them as hostages to make Coonhide Luck do his dirty work on his behalf for a very long time. While the Hidden Grove members were captured by Liboric, Kel Halam and his team pushed through Zahard's army with relative ease, but something was different compared to Kel Halam's vision. Instead of finding a sleeping Zahard in a floating castle, they arrived at a cliff, and on the edge of the cliff there was a single man staring into the distance. Without facing the ambush team, this man simply said the following: "Let me ask you something. What am I to you people? I was the first one to climb the tower. I was the greatest fisherman in battle. And I pioneered a civilization of mutual understanding among the people of the tower. But you probably know me by a different word. The word king." Hearing this man claiming to be the king of the tower, Zahard himself, Kel Halam quickly called him a liar, since he saw Zahard sleeping in his vision. But Zahard simply called him a fool for being overconfident in his ability just because he could see a tiny glimpse into destiny. Zahard then proceeded to attack Kel Halam and his team and completely overwhelmed them, with the sole survivor being Kel Halam himself. Now, with the assault on Zahard failed and the Hidden Grove members either sealed, captured or killed, FUG had no other choice but to go into hiding. And so, the Age of Genesis came to an end and the Zahard Empire became the overwhelming force ruling over the tower. And that was the story of the Age of Genesis, which concludes the third part of my Tower of God history series. In part 4 we will take a closer look at the Floor of Death. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Also let me know in the comments what you thought about this video. I'm Dennis, and as always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you again.